guys, welcome to episode 5 of House of Recaps. I'm really sorry that I haven't gotten to post a video very recently. I have had midterms this past week, so I unfortunately had to spend my time studying and not rewatching episodes and making videos about it. So I'm really sorry, but I'm making up for it because this weekend you will not only be getting this vlog, but you'll also be getting episode 6, which you can watch after this, and I'll put a link at the end of the video or in the doobly-doo. So yeah, here we go. For this, I'm going to be talking about House of Sibuna, House of Payback, House of Pendulums, House of Impasse, House of Help, House of Phobias, House of Isis, and House of Curfews. Okay, so House of Sibuna, House of Payback starts in the tunnels where we left off. Sibuna has just gotten the alligator down, but it makes this really loud noise, and Victor hears and Vera hears, but Vera distracts Victor from doing anything about it by saying that it was her, so that's good for Sibuna. But the only problem is that while Vera's in the cellar, she finds the hopscotch page that Sibuna had been using to get through the hopscotch, so that's not good. Nina, Amber, and Fabian are trying to lift the alligator by themselves so they can get it across the little trench thing, but they realize they're not strong enough, so then Amber suggests that they bring in Alfie and Patricia back to Sibuna. They ultimately decide that it's a pretty good idea and that Patricia and Alfie would be really helpful, but Nina's a little weary about it because she doesn't want to risk their lives, so there's no final decisions made. Later on, we see Mara apologizing to Jerome about the whole letter incident that she had with Poppy, and he ends up telling her that his dad wants to meet him and Poppy, and he's not sure what to think about that. Which, I mean, you can't blame him because he probably hasn't spoken to his father in 10 years, so that's probably a little weird for him. Then it's breakfast, and there's these cute little shots. You see Eddie smiling and then Patricia smiling, and I'm like, I love the petty, it's so cute. Oh, my fangirl heart. Then Joy smiles at Fabian, and it's like, oh, this is kind of cute, except Fabian's kind of being awkward, and then Nina's all death glare because she doesn't like Joy and Fabian together, obviously. Then someone's complaining about the music Eddie's playing, I don't remember who, but Patricia makes a comment oh, Eddie has the best music taste here, guys, and everyone's just sitting there what? Did she just compliment someone? And that was really funny. Unfortunately, though, that led to the whole bet that Eddie had going on with Jerome and Alfie being told to Patricia, so then she gets really upset, which, I mean, I don't blame her, and it makes sense for her to get upset. That's really in character for her. So she goes to Eddie, she takes the pitcher of milk that was on the table and pours it all over her head, just like season 1, guys. I was so happy about that moment. It was really funny. Later, Nina is talking to Amber and Fabian, and she tells them that she does not want Alfie and Patricia to be a part of Sibuna simply for the fact that she doesn't want to risk their lives. Then we see this really nice friendship moment between Mara and Joy, and they decide to sign up for the school news website, and Joy signs up Patricia for it too. Then, despite what happened earlier in the episode, Amber and Fabian decide to send invites to Alfie and Patricia for a Sibuna meeting anyway, and they do it behind Nina's back. Then there's this moment where the teachers are all talking or whatever, and someone gives back Jasper the library key that he lost because the collector stole it the night before, and they're all be careful with that and stuff, because obviously there are bad people in this world, like the collector. So then we see the meeting after school with Sibuna minus Nina. At first they meet outside, and then for whatever reason they go back inside the house and talk about it, but while they're talking about it and Fabian and Amber are explaining everything, Nina walks in and she's pissed at them. Mostly pissed at Fabian, and it turns into this whole argument about the kiss that had happened the night before, and it's just really awkward, and I'm just Fabina, this is not Fabina, and it's kind of upsetting. But since Patricia and Alfie already heard about it, Nina just kind of accepts that, okay, they're in Sibuna, and they kind of needed the help anyway. So at 10 o'clock, Sibuna goes down into the cellar, except there's a problem because Victor realizes they're not in bed, because obviously he does his whole, it's 10 o'clock, I want to hear a pin drop thing, and he checked their beds and they weren't there, so that's not good. The trip ends up being a fail anyway because they can't lift up the alligator thing and fail to get it all across the trench, so it's bad. And then to add on top of that, when they're in the little study area, they can hear Victor figuring out the combination code and trying to guess what it is, but it's bad because he knows that it's there, so not good. The next day at school, Alfie's talking to Jerome, and then Amber comes up and makes Alfie hold all of her stuff, and Alfie starts questioning whether or not him and Amber are compatible anymore. Then Jerome leaves Alfie and tells Mara that he's going to visit his father in jail, and Mara decides to come with him. Back to Alfie, he makes a decision that he's going to break up with her, so he goes to talk to her, and he's like, okay, Amber, I can't do this anymore, I'm breaking up with you, and she's just no, okay, bye. It's really funny. She refuses to accept that they're breaking up, and I love it. It's Alfie's, I love this ship, even though they're a mess. Then we see Patricia, who's still really mad at Eddie for the whole bet thing, so she ordered this fancy French chocolate, which is actually just chocolate-covered worms, and decides to give it to Eddie as a prank gift. After that, we see Joy and Nina talking. Joy confronts Nina about the whole kiss thing last night. She kind of apologizes, not exactly, but kind of. But Nina's kind of you know what? Whatever. I'm not even with Fabian anymore anyway. And she was kind of just being really mean about joy. And then poor Fabian's standing in the background hearing the whole thing, and it's probably like breaking his little heart because he still likes Nina. It's so sad. Then we get to see Jerome and Mara at jail meeting the dad for the first time, and Jerome's dad seems like a really nice guy. I don't understand why exactly he's in jail. They haven't explained that. But he kind of apologizes to Jerome and for, like, you know, for being a bad father and whatnot, but Jerome is still like really bitter about it and almost gets up and leaves until Mara tells him to just like calm down and sit back down. So back at school, Sibuna's all meeting in the drama room and talking about how they're gonna get the plank across the trench, and Fabian comes up with this really cool, nerdy way to get it across, and then Amber's all like, we could just hold it up and then push it down, and everyone's like, yeah, and Fabian's just like, oh. So that was funny. So they end up going outside to practice doing their plan with like a log, and they get it like once, but they fail. But Nina starts to hear Sankara talking to her, the creepy ghost lady, and she decides like, whatever, we don't have time to practice, we just gotta go and do it. So they decide to do it that night. Back in jail, Jerome is calmed down now, and they're having this nice like heartfelt conversation, and then before they leave, Mara's gone already, and his dad tells Jerome that he wants him to come alone next time. So it's nighttime now at the Anubis house, and Sibuna's deciding to go down to the cellar to practice their plank thing, and the cellar door is already unlocked, so they decide to just take that instead of using the little oven passageway. But then, just as they go down, Victor appears. Down in the tunnels, they successfully place the plank across the trench thing, so that's good for them. Then Patricia decides to be the first one to walk across it, and just as she's walking, all these pendulums appear out of nowhere and almost like knock her off. And that's where the episode ends. House of Pendulums, House of Impasse starts when Patricia is still standing on the plank and the pendulums are going everywhere. She's trying to get out, but she ends up slowly turning around and manages to get through, so that's good for her. Fabian comes up with the idea that they can memorize the swinging pendulums like a song, so they'll have to just work on it and come back later. However, when they're in the tunnels, Victor and Vera are also in the cellar, and as they are leaving, they see the little numbers on the lock. They figure out what it is as the door's opening. They hide in the cellar, watch them leave, and then once they're gone, they come back and they end up going in. Once they're in the study, they don't really know what else to do. They can't figure out what else is there and what the point of it is, so they just leave. At school, Sibuna starts practicing their pendulum swinging, and they're pretending to be the pendulums while one person's walking, and it's really funny to watch. Meanwhile, Victor is at the house snooping around the rooms, and he's in Nina and Amber's room, and he sees the dollhouse and finds a little drawer underneath and ends up finding the map of the tunnel, so he copies it down and he shows Vera. So they're pretty thrilled about that because they're getting one step closer to the mystery. At school, Jerome approaches Mara and gives her flowers as a thank you for coming to jail with him. That sounds really weird, but I think it's also because he kind of likes her, and it was really cute. It was a really sweet moment. Mara brings up Poppy, so they start talking about that and how Jerome doesn't want Poppy to know, but meanwhile Poppy's lurking in the background, so she kind of hears the whole thing. We're back at Sibuna practice now, and they're still practicing the pendulum stuff, and it's Alfie's turn when suddenly Mrs. Andrews comes in and catches them, so they're trying to come up with an excuse, and Alfie's all like, it's interpretive dance, and he does this whole, like, bizarre thing, and it's really funny. So they end up stopping practice, and they look out to the hallway, and Patricia sees that Eddie is giving out the chocolate that she gave him to everyone, which is not good because it's not really chocolate, it's worms. So she approaches him and is trying to get him to stop, but then she finds out that he knew all along because he can magically speak French. Now that he has the map, Victor decides to try to go down into the cellar again, and he ends up making his way past the office and into the tunnels, but because he doesn't have an amulet, he is blinded, and he's actually going through just as Sibuna is going in to go through. So, not good. So when they do come in, he has no idea that they're there, and they manage to kind of like sneak around him and open the door and lead him into the cellar, so he has no idea that they're there the entire time. But it's bad for Sibuna because now they realize that Victor has a way of getting down there, so not good. Vera ends up rescuing Victor, and he's trying to like help him or whatever, and they're talking about how to get past that, and they realize that the amulets that they had found in the office probably are what gets past the blinding light, so that's not good for Sibuna. Then we see Vera taking a picture of something, and she texts it to Jasper, and when Jasper opens it up, it says it's from the Collector, so it's like, is Vera the Collector? I'm pretty sure. Sibuna ends up going into the tunnels the next morning really early because they couldn't do much with the whole Victor incident the day before. They all perfectly get across the pendulum, so that was good for them, but they hit a dead end, so they don't know what else to do, and they kind of just be like, alright, we'll do this again another time. Poppy is also lurking around the Anubis house really early in the morning. She sneaks into Jerome's room and steals the letter that he got from his dad. At school, the news website is having a meeting, and Eddie is there because that is what his punishment is for giving out the gross chocolate. But what's really interesting about this is that he did not rat Patricia out for being the one to actually give him the chocolate, so that was really sweet. Also at the meeting, we learned that Mara and Joy are going to be competing for the spot as editor of the news site, so it's going to get interesting. That night, Fabian, Nina, and Amber are studying the map, but they don't really do much with it, and they all go to bed, and Amber, Patricia, and Alfie have nightmares with Sin Cara, and they all get marked. So House of Help, House of Phobias begins in the morning with everyone waking up and finding out that they are cursed. And they're all confronting Nina about it and Fabian. And Patricia's like freaking out and she's really pissed that they didn't tell them because, you know, she didn't want to be cursed. And there's nothing they can do about it. At school you could tell that the curse is getting to Alfie because he's kind of like jumpy and he's having flashbacks of last year. But Jerome's really nice and he kind of like comforts him and I was like, oh, it's like bromance, guys. Mara then approaches Jerome and apologizes to him for being so involved with his personal life and says she's going to stop, but then has to beg him for more information. He ends up complying with her though and tells her about how his dad wants him to come alone next time. So back at the house, Victor has his vision back and him and Vera are discussing ways that they can get the amulets because Vera realizes that they are not in the office anymore because Sibuna was smart and took them. But Vera tells Victor the best thing they can do is just wait and the amulets are going to come to them. There's another news website meeting and Mara ends up getting the editor job and Joy's kind of bitter about that because she really doesn't have much, you know? She has no boyfriend, she has no friends, she has no editor job. I feel really bad for her. So Sibuna's back in the tunnels again and they're still trying to figure out what to do about the dead end. Alfie tries to ram the wall and ends up bouncing off and hitting the other wall that's on the side of it, but he finds a little opening passage thing that stops the pendulums. And they're trying to figure out what this little passage is, but it's good that they found something. Jerome then goes to visit his dad in jail, but when he gets there he finds Poppy's already there, so he's kind of mad and also confused because A, Poppy wasn't supposed to be there, B, she wasn't supposed to know, so he's kind of just like, what? Then we see Victor in the Frobisher library and he's looking through books trying to find the Book of Isis and Jasper's trying to help him, but he's just like, meh. I don't need your help. But he ends up finding some information in the book that's very valuable to him, and that's that the Mask of Anubis can weep tears of gold, which he knows is important and has to do with the elixir. So this means that Victor is now after the mask, which is not good. Down in the tunnel, Sibuna decides to pull straws to see who has to crawl through the tunnel. Amber ends up pulling the short stick, and she's like freaking out. She's like, guys, I can't do this, I can't do this. And Alfie's like, fine, I'll do it for you. And she's really happy about that. But it's funny because they're not really dating anymore, and he's still acting like a good boyfriend. So Alfie's going through the tunnels and it's really creepy and there's bugs and dirt and it's getting smaller as he goes in there and he gets really claustrophobic and all of a sudden the dirt collapses behind him and he's trapped. Amber tries to go in after him but gets really freaked out by all the bugs in there and goes out. So then Fabian comes to the rescue and digs him out and everything's okay. And there's this really cute Amphi hug and it's like really real and you could tell how much they care about each other and I'm like, oh, this is so sweet. I'm glad you guys aren't officially broken up yet even though you're not exactly together either. Back at jail, it's Clark family bonding time. They're all like fighting but not, and then like talking about, you know, their life now, and Poppy's really happy to be seeing her dad. Jerome's dad again tells him that he needs to come alone next time. Back at the house, Sibuna's out of the tunnels and they're sitting there talking about their fears because they think the tunnel is hard to get through because it personally like attacks people's individual fears. They come to the agreement that they all have to overcome their fears if they want to get through to the next trap or the next area of the tunnels. Downstairs, Joy and Eddie are in the kitchen and Eddie's making this like spaghetti sub-hero hoagie sandwich thing and Joy decides that this is the ideal time to confront him about Patricia. At first he kind of just like smirks at her like, I bet Patricia put you up to this, but then she's like, actually no, and he kind of gets like mad and he's really surprised. He's like, what? Why didn't she say anything? And it's really funny and it's like, Petty. I love Petty. They're like my Makara of this season because I can't have any Makara this season. Petty's like the replacement. The next day, Sibuna's at school trying to face their bug fears in the science lab. In the hallways, Jerome confronts Mara and tells her about the prison visit that he had and how Poppy was there and he's kind of upset about it. At night, right before everyone's about to go to bed, Amber confronts Alfie in his room and says that she wants to break up with him, which is really funny, and he's just sitting there like, we already broke up, and it was really funny. But because it's past bedtime, Victor comes in and yells at Amber for being in Alfie's room. And when she walks out, he sees that Amber is clearly wearing the amulet, so he's kind of like, oh, that's where they hid it. So that's not good for Sibuna. Back at school the next morning, Sibuna is facing their bug fears again in the science lab, and they're holding them this time when suddenly Victor and Mr. Sweet come in. They tell them that they are now enforcing the no jewelry rule at the school, and that they need to remove any jewelry, so they're kind of standing there like, crap, we're wearing the amulets, except you can't tell they're wearing the amulets. You can't see it around their neck. The collars cover it. So they're kind of standing there, and Nina finally comes clean, like, fine, and gives it to them. And it was a really stupid move, because there was no way to prove they were wearing amulets, because you couldn't see it, and unless they made them, like, take their shirts off, which obviously isn't going to happen, so that was kind of stupid on their part for doing that, but it was mostly Nina's fault. So now Sibuna's kind of in a rut. Victor ends up going down into the tunnels and he gets past the light, so that's not good. Sibuna comes to the realization that they're going to have to steal the amulets from Victor in order to be able to continue with the journey, and Sakara ends up being in the tunnels with Victor as we see him kind of like exploring down there. And that's the end of the episode. So House of Isis, House of Curfews, we see Victor and Vera downstairs. Victor has gone into the tunnels, and Vera is in the study when she's searching around and ends up finding the Book of Isis. But she doesn't just kind of hold on to the Book of Isis, she flips through it, rips out the last chapter because she realizes it has something to do with the mask, and hides it before she shows it to Victor when he comes back. Of course, Victor doesn't know, and he's just sitting there like, the Book of Isis, yay! So, Sibuna's at school now, and they're sitting around trying to figure out how they're going to get the amulets back, and they really have no idea what to do. Eddie's chilling alone at school when Mara confronts him and yells at him for not finishing the article he was supposed to write. And just as Eddie is leaving, Patricia is entering, and he kind of does this cute little, like, teasing thing to her, and she gets all mad, but it's cute because it's a love-hate relationship. Then Patricia goes to Mara, and they start talking about their hatred for Eddie, and they decide that they need to get revenge on him. Jerome is finally at the prison visiting his dad by himself this time, and his dad tells him about a gem that he needs him to find because he lost it when he was a student there. So Jerome now has something to do, which is good for him. He has to find this gem and put it in the Frobisher shield. When Jerome's back at school, he ends up asking Fabian where he can find an armor, which is where his dad told him the gem is, and Fabian thinks that it's in the Frobisher library. Also at this time, Fabian and Nina see Victor and realizes that he is wearing all 5 amulets, so they end up coming with an idea off of that of what to do. Their first attempt is to simply get Victor to take them off, so Amber gets his shirt all messy by pulling a plug in the drain, and then Alfie puts itching powder in his new shirt, so they kind of just wait to see what happens with that. At night, Sibuna's kind of staking out waiting for Victor to leave his office, and he finally gets too itchy and he takes the amulets off and hides them, and goes to get a new change of shirts. So Sibuna rushes in, is searching everywhere in his office, and they can't find the amulet, so they're kind of like, crap, what are we going to do? Victor comes back, he puts the amulets back on, and as he's flipping through the Book of Isis, he realizes that there's no final chapter, so he's kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? This is the most important chapter. Back in Sibuna land, they end up coming up with a plan to get the amulets back from Victor. Basically, they're going to keep him up all night so he gets so tired that when he falls asleep, nothing will wake him up, and then they'll steal it from there. So that night, they commence with that plan. First, Amber sneaks outside to turn on the security light and then sneaks away, so then Victor has to go outside to turn it off and figure out what got it on. Jerome's up in the middle of the night because he needs to go to the Frobisher library to look for the gem, so he gets Alfie with him, and Alfie's like, hey, perfect opportunity to cause a distraction, so he goes with him, and he ends up setting an alarm just as they leave, so Victor has to go shut it off. By the way, during that scene, there was this really funny thing where Jerome's being all serious, like looking around, and Alfie's all like, I'm a ninja, and I'm like, I love you, you're so... What would we do without Alfie? Then when Victor's back at the house, Nina and Fabian had snuck into the kitchen and they're hiding under the cupboard, which is a little close for comfort, by the way. And they have stereos set up all over the place, so from under the sink they have a remote to turn on really loud music, so Victor comes down trying to figure out what the heck it is, and Nina and Fabian are just sitting there like hee hee hee, and it's really cute. Patricia gets Mara up in the middle of the night and they go to prank Eddie. They put something on top of his door so when he opens it, it falls all over him, but Victor ends up hearing. And Mara manages to sneak off, but Victor catches them, and Patricia's all kind of like smug, and Eddie's just sitting here like, what the heck is going on? And they get detention for the prank and for being a distraction. At this point, Victor is like pissed, and he's like really tired, and Vera ends up coming to him because she hears everything that's going on and wants to know what's going on, and they end up talking about the Book of Isis. Victor's confused why there's no final chapter, and of course, Vera knows, but is not going to tell him. So now all Sibuna is in Amber and Nina's room, and they're sitting there trying to stay awake. But they kind of fail, and at one point everyone but Fabian and Nina are sleeping. So Nina's in her bed and Fabian's kind of like leaning next to her on the floor, and they're talking. They're like reminiscing on the past and all the things they did in season 1, and it's really cute. And, you know, Nina's getting to the point where she's about to fall asleep when Fabian decides, like, hey, let's confess to her that I still like her. And he's kind of like, oh, like, let's give Fabina a try. I miss those old times. But, of course, just as he says that, Nina's already sleeping, and it's like, oh. So eventually everyone's sleeping when Nina suddenly jolts awake and is like, crap, we're supposed to go get the amulet. So she quickly wakes Fabian up, they go run to his office, and really quietly they cut the amulets off of him, and then Victor starts to rustle, and the episode ends. And that is episode 5 of House of Recaps. As always, I'll put my Tumblrs and Twitters and other social networking websites in the description, so you can go check all that out. I talk about House of News a lot, especially because the season's airing right now, so go check that out. There will be another House of Recaps episode up like right now, so if you want to go watch it, there'll be a link in the doobly-doo, or you can just click my hand right here. Give me a high five. Come on, just give me a high five. This video is not going to end anything way special, just give me a high five so you can go watch the other video. Waiting. Okay, at this point you get a 3 maximum. Just give me a high five. Come on. You want to watch the next video, don't you? Alright, I guess you don't.